Good evening. Thanks, Sam. Well, first I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not a nuclear physicist. This is probably the last thing I ever expected to be wearing while standing in a lecture hall at MIT. But I'm glad I'm here. It's a very important part of my title year, the whole education and outreach. But typically my education is on a one-on-one basis. So this is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm gonna do my best. Hopefully we'll learn something. You'll learn something about me. I'll learn something about you, and we'll have a good time, a good open discussion. And I'm also here to prove to the world that Sam is not the only leather person in New England. So first of all, a common question would be, how does someone go from this to that? Well, it's a fairly natural transition, really. I was born and raised in Lewiston, Maine, which is a fairly small city as far as cities go. It's in central Maine. I'm first generation American. Both of my parents are immigrants from Quebec. So I was raised French Canadian Catholic, which also means I was raised guilty. From a very, very early age, I knew I was very, very different. I remember I would go into my friend's garage because her dad had a black Harley. It had very heavy, thick saddlebags and a very wide leather seat. I snuck in there. I like to touch it and just look at it, sit on it. I might have even licked the seat. I was 8. So from a very early age, this has always been something that's been a part of me. At age 16, my coming out story pretty much is I forgot to mail a letter to a boyfriend, and my mother found it. It was a 19-year-old man who was in the military. I was 16 at the time, and naturally, being of the upbringing that I was made to go talk to the priest, because that solves everything. Well, to my mother's dismay, it was a gay priest. Oops. So after that whole thing blew over and calmed down, life kind of settled down, and when I was 19, I met my first partner. He was actually a man that I had been warned to stay away from because he was this big mean leather daddy who liked doing really kinky things to young boys. So naturally I went to meet him. And they were right. For 16 years we're together. Unfortunately our relationship ended due to circumstances we won't really get into. But in any event, after that ended, I did lose my faith in the community a little bit, my leather community. Our relationship was very much an old guard relationship. He was my daddy, I was his boy. I'll explain a little bit more about what that dynamic is a little bit later. But I became so hypersensitive to the negatives in our community that I was convinced the men I was looking for didn't exist anymore. So I stopped looking. And then all of a sudden I met my current partner, that guy up there, who has everything that I was looking for in a man, except for kink. In fact, he might be the very reason that the term vanilla sex was invented. and he's okay with that.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm okay with that. But the longer that went on, the more I knew I was missing something, that 8-year-old, that part of me that's always been part of me. And so I went through my second coming out, which was my true coming out. I decided to compete for Mr. New England Leather to try to rediscover community, and ever since that happened in November, the barn doors blew off, and I've been out, and there's more community than I can handle right now. So that's pretty much how I got here, what this whole thing is about. Now just to tell you a little bit about, well, Sam did a great job telling you about the Mr. New England Leather competition, but just to give you some sense of